What's up, everybody? This is Whiskey in the Six. I'm Rob. Doing my top 6 American whiskey / bourbons that I've ever reviewed on this channel. Now, a lot of you guys know me as a Scotch guy, and I will not deny that I am a Scotch guy. I love Scotch. But as I was going through my archives, I noticed that I've done a whole bunch, close to 100 bourbon / rye videos. That's all American whiskey. And really, when I was going through the names, it's pretty much the who's who, the what's what of the bourbon world. We're talking Pappy's, we're talking BTAC, we're talking all the whiskeys that are highly sought after and heavily allocated. Alright, so I thought I'd put a list together for you guys. I'm going to list some of my contenders just to see what we're dealing with here. Then I'm going to list my honorable mentions. So whiskeys that I really debated putting on my top 6 list. And then I'm going to actually give you my top 6 list. So here it goes. Some of the contenders include Pappy Van Winkle 15, Pappy 20, and Pappy 23. I've had a chance to review and taste each of these whiskeys with my buddy Jeremy from Sipper Social Club, and each one of these kind of disappointed in some way. The one I liked the most was the 15, but for the money that you pay, not only on secondary but retail as well, I think these are just insanely overhyped, insanely overpriced, and they cannot be on my list. Some of the other contenders were Blanton's. Blanton's Gold, Blanton's Straight from the Barrel. I've had a whole bunch of different types of Blanton's, and I've never really been a fan, so that could not make my honorable mentions, and it did not make my top 6. MICHTER'S 10, Rebel Yell 10, good stuff, really good, but just not good enough to make my honorable mentions or my top 6 list. And some of the more hard to find bottles these days is the Elijah Craig 12-year-old. I used to love this stuff, but it's been surpassed by many whiskeys that I've tried since originally trying the Elijah Craig 12. You can't really get it anymore anyways. Okay, coming up is my honorable mentions. Now, quick thing about this is I'm just going to list them. I'm not going to go into too much detail. They were close to making my top 6. That's why they're even mentioned here. If I had to put a list of 20 together, these would probably all be on there. All really good whiskeys, either ryes or bourbons. I really enjoy all of these. Okay, so Weller 107 is the first one. We got Evan Williams Bottled in Bond. We have Henry McKenna 10-year-old. We have ECBP, particularly the Hazmat Batch 11. That was 139.4 proof. Really, really great stuff. Just didn't crack my list this time. Four Roses does a great job. There's a whole bunch of great expressions from Four Roses. I really like the single barrel proofs, but they're hard to get up this way. I've only had a couple of them. It didn't quite make my top 6, but really great stuff. And the Old Rip Van Winkle 10-year-old, which is, in my opinion, one of the best bang for your bucks in the whole Van Winkle family. I know it's not considered a Pappy Van Winkle or any of that stuff, but the Old Rip Van Winkle is excellent. To cap off my honorable mentions, I'm going to talk about the Wild Turkey Rare Breed and the Old Ezra 7-year-old barrel proof. I thought those were great, inexpensive whiskeys that you can get pretty readily available. I think you need to get those if you can. They are excellent whiskeys. Alright, coming at you with my top 6. Number 6 is the Wild Turkey Revival. Now, this is an older bourbon, combination of bourbons to, I believe, 15 years old. Excellent stuff. It's finished in a sherry cask, and that's what turns a lot of people off, especially the bourbon purists. But I really like this whiskey. I think it's a great whiskey. It's a great whiskey for those who really like Scotch because it gives you kind of the flavors of both worlds. Honestly, just great stuff. You got to get that one. Number 5 is the Kentucky Owl 11-year-old rye. Now, this whiskey is mind-blowing in my opinion, especially batch 1. Batch 2 wasn't as good as batch 1, but still really good. It's really expensive now. Unfortunately, also really hard to get. So if you can get it, I highly recommend you do. The batch 1 was stunning. That's definitely my number 5. Number 4 is the George T. Stagg. Now, of course, this comes from the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. I'm particularly talking about the 2012 George T. Stagg. Now, I really like the 2017. I didn't mind the 2018, but the 2012 is the one that if you have to go out there and buy, I highly recommend you do. It's a whole bunch of cherry and Coca-Cola notes. I absolutely loved it. It was my favorite George T. Stagg, and it's my number 4 on this list. Number 3 is the Jack Daniel's Heritage Barrel. I absolutely adored this whiskey. It's bottled at 50%. It is one of the most stunning whiskeys I've ever had. If you watch my channel before, you know I absolutely love this whiskey. I think it's fantastic stuff. It's definitely my 3rd favorite American whiskey that I've ever had. So number 2 is the William Larue Weller. Particularly 2017. Really love this whiskey. I was lucky enough to get 2 bottles of the 2017. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. I highly recommend it. It's a caramel bomb, just beautiful whiskey. Again, part of the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection and very difficult to get, but if you can get it, it's one of those ones out of the whole collection that I would recommend you open almost every single time. Especially if you're a big bourbon person, because I don't think you're going to get a better bourbon than the William Larue Weller in my opinion. Alright, so number 1, and this is going to shock a lot of people, especially the hardcore purists, the hardcore bourbon guys, but in my opinion, this MICHTER'S Toasted Barrel Finish Kentucky Straight Rye Whiskey, bottled at 54.5% or 108.8 proof, honestly is the most stunning American whiskey I've ever had. One of the best whiskeys I've ever had, period. Honestly, I absolutely love this. It's a shame they're not making it anymore. I hope they reconsider, and I hope they decide to do 1 or 2 more batches of this. I know that they do have the MICHTER'S Barrel Proof Rye out. I have a bottle of that as well. I don't think it's as good as this particular expression. The double cask work that they did with this whiskey was just absolutely phenomenal. Like I said, this will shock a lot of people, especially purists that are just obsessed with bourbon, obsessed with particular types of rye. I didn't mention a few of the other ones out there. There's a lot of whiskeys, a lot of bourbons in particular that I didn't mention that I've reviewed on this channel. Some of them may have slipped my mind, but the ones that mattered were on this list, and that's what I want you guys to know. So that's my top 6, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you really like the video, you can hit the subscribe button. You can hit the bell to get notifications for when I do release more videos. I'm actually still dry this month for at least another 20 more days. It's only been 10 days and it feels like a very long 10 days. But I have a whiskey review coming up and then another list video coming up, which is going to list my favorite no age statement Scotch whiskeys. Also, I should mention that if you guys want Whiskey in the Six swag, you can get it at theswaglife.com. That's run by a good friend of mine from Quebec. I'll list the website over here. You guys can check it out. You can get hats, sweaters, and t-shirts. If you want to watch the review of this, you can check out the archive. I reviewed this back in the day, closer to when it first came out. Like I said, I love this whiskey. Fantastic stuff. Guys, if you want to support this channel, you can go to Patreon and support Whiskey in the Six. You guys can also check me out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Cheers, guys.